You're listening to Horror Frequency. 12 years I ran ground teams for mountain search and rescue in the San Juans. 12 years of walking into the dark to bring people back. And in all that time, my unit had exactly one rule we never broke. If you find a person in the dark, and you call out to them, and they will not turn around to face you, you do not go to them. You back away. You leave. When I was 26, I followed that rule, and a real woman died 40 feet from me because I did. So you can understand why, 11 years later, on the worst night of my life, I broke it. This is what was waiting when I did. My name is Wes Garrity. I'm 51 now. For most of my adult life, I lived in Silverton, Colorado, a town of about 600 people, sitting at 9,000 feet, surrounded on every side by the San Juans, some of the most beautiful and most unforgiving mountains in the country. In the summer, the meadows come up green and full of wildflowers, and the tourists drive over from Durango and think they understand the place. They don't. The mountains let people think that. Then winter comes, and the snowline drops, and the mountains go back to being what they always were. I joined San Juan County Search and Rescue at 24. By 30, I was running ground teams. It's volunteer work, mostly. People don't realize that. There's no salary in it. You get the call at 2 in the morning, you get out of a warm bed, you put on cold boots, and you go out into the worst weather of the year to look for somebody you've never met. You do it because if it was your wife out there, or your kid, you'd want somebody to do it for you. You learn things in that work they don't put in the manual. You learn how a person sounds when they've given up. You learn that the cold doesn't kill people. Panic kills them, and the cold just finishes the job. You learn to read a slope, to read weather coming over a ridge, to read the small wrong details that tell you a lost person went left instead of right. And you learn that the mountains at night are a different country than the mountains in daylight. Same trails, same trees, different rules. Things that make perfect sense at noon stop making sense at 3 in the morning, when your headlamp is the only light for 10 miles, and the dark presses up against the edge of it like water against glass. I want to be clear about the kind of man I am, because it matters for what comes later. I am not superstitious. I never have been. I've pulled bodies out of avalanche debris, out of creeks, out of the bottom of couloirs. I've done the kind of recovery work that stays with a person, and I have never once felt a presence. In my experience, death is quiet and physical and final. It's a weight on a litter and a long carry-out. There's nothing in it that watches you back. That's what I believed for 12 years. I'm telling you that so you understand I'm not the kind of man who makes this up. I've got no reason to. I'm not selling anything. The rule I told you about, we called it the turn rule. Every new member got it on their first call-out, the same flat way every time, usually from one of the old-timers who'd been doing this since the 70s. If you find someone who won't turn to face you, you don't go to them. You leave. Most people assumed it was about safety, and it makes sense as a safety rule. Disoriented subjects can be combative. Hypothermic people do strange things. A man who won't turn around might be confused, might be armed, might be hiding something in his hands. So you announce yourself, you keep your distance, and you wait for him to face you and show you he's safe to approach. That's what I assumed, too, for a while. Here's the part I've never told the way it actually happened. Not to the county, not to my wife, not to anyone. When I was 26, 2 years in, We got a call out for an overdue day hiker near Engineer Pass. A woman in her 50s, named Carol Aldous. She'd gone up that morning for a photography hike, told her husband she'd be back by dark, and never came back. We searched into the night. It was October, cold, clear, the kind of night where the stars come down so close, you feel like you could put a hand up into them. Around 2 in the morning, I was working a drainage alone, calling her name every minute or so the way you're trained to, stopping to listen, moving on. And my headlamp caught a figure, a person, sitting maybe 40 feet off at the base of a boulder, facing away from me, slumped a little to one side, the right size, the right shape. A person in a tan jacket, which is exactly what Carol's husband said she'd been wearing when she left. My heart came up into my throat, because in that work, finding someone is the whole point, and you wait your whole career for the moment your light lands on the person you've been looking for. I did everything by the book. I called out, "San Juan Search and Rescue, Carol. Carol, I'm here to help you." Nothing. The figure didn't move. I called again, louder this time. "Ma'am, I need you to turn around for me." Nothing. No turn. No sound. Just that slumped shape, facing the rock, perfectly still. And the rule said, if they won't turn, you leave. I was 26, and I was terrified of doing the wrong thing, and that rule was the only solid ground I had under me. So I keyed my radio. I reported a non-responsive subject, and I backed out to the edge of the clearing to wait for a second team member before approaching. That was protocol. That was the rule. I stood there in the dark, 40 feet away, and I waited. It took 11 minutes for my teammate to reach me. I counted some of them. I stood there and watched that shape, and it never moved, and I told myself I was doing the right thing. When we finally went in together, with 2 lights, it was Carol, the real Carol, hypothermic. In the final stage, the one they call paradoxical, where the body stops shivering and the mind goes quiet, and a person just stops responding to the world. She'd been alive when I first found her. The coroner was clear about that. She died somewhere in those 11 minutes I spent backing away and waiting, because she wouldn't turn around. She couldn't turn around. She was too far gone. By the time my light hit her, she was past lifting her own head. The rule that's supposed to protect you from the false ones. It can't tell the difference between a thing that won't turn and a dying woman who can't. The county cleared me. I'd followed protocol, they said. My team lead sat me down and told me the rule existed for a reason, and I'd done exactly right, and there was no way I could have known. I have never for one single day in 25 years believed him. I carried Carol Aldous out on a litter at sunrise, with the light coming up gold over the peaks, and her husband waiting at the trailhead, and I have carried her every night since. That's the thing the mountain reached into me and found. Not grief, guilt. The specific guilt of a man who once followed a rule and watched it kill someone real. A man who, from that morning on, swore he would never ever leave a person behind again. I changed after Carol. I got better at the job, harder to rattle, and at the same time I made myself a quiet promise that I would always go to them. Always, no matter what. Remember that. Because 11 years later, something out there knew it about me before I said a single word. It was the second week of November. A bad time of year for it. Early hard snow already on the ground up high, and nighttime temperatures dropping well below 0. The call-out came in a little after 9 at night. A man named Aaron Pell, 34, hiking solo, overdue from a loop near Carbon Lake Basin. His girlfriend reported him when he missed an evening check-in. By the time we got the team staged and started up, it was full dark, and the temperature was falling fast, and we all knew the math without saying it out loud. A man dressed for a day hike does not survive a November night up there, not without shelter. I was running the ground team. My partner that night was a younger guy named Theo Doss. 6 years in, solid, calm, didn't waste words. The kind of teammate you want next to you when it gets bad, because he doesn't add to the noise in your own head. We went up the standard approach, calling Pell's name, sweeping the trees on both sides with our lamps, stopping every so often to listen. The snow muffled everything. Our own footsteps sounded close and dead. About 2 hours in, near the lower basin, we found his first sign. A dropped trekking pole, half buried, off to the side of the route. A little farther on, a glove. And then drag marks in the new snow that didn't read right to me. 2 straight. A lost, exhausted, freezing man doesn't walk a straight line. He wanders, he stops, he doubles back. These marks went up toward the head of the basin, like a string somebody had pulled tight. I noticed it. I want to be honest about that. Some part of me looked at those marks and knew they were wrong. But we had a freezing man somewhere ahead of us, and you follow the sign you've got. The marks led up toward the head of the basin, where the trees thinned out into an open boulder field under the cliffs, and that's where around 1 a.m, my lamp caught the figure. A person, sitting, maybe 60 feet upslope at the base of a boulder, facing away from us. I felt my whole body go cold, in a way that had nothing to do with the temperature, because it was the exact image. Carol Aldos, 40 feet off, slumped against a rock, facing away from my light. 11 years just folded shut like they were nothing at all. Doss saw it the same second I did. We both stopped. I did it by the book, the way I'd done it at 26. I called out, "San Juan Search and Rescue, Aaron Pell." The figure didn't move, right size for Pell. Dark jacket, like the description we'd been given, sitting very still in the snow. I called again, "Aaron, I need you to turn around and show me you're okay." And it didn't turn. Of course it didn't. Doss put his hand on my arm, the same place my old team lead had once put his hand, 11 years before. And he said the words, the rule, quiet, steady. "Wes, it won't turn. We back out. We wait for a second light. That's the rule." And here is where my story stops being like anyone else's. Because I'd done that before. I had backed out and waited for a second light, and the cost of that was a woman dying 40 feet from me while I stood in the dark, obeying a sentence somebody had written on a clipboard. Every part of me that had spent 11 years swearing, never again, stood straight up at once. I said, "Last time I followed that rule, Carol Aldos died." Doss knew the story. Everyone in the unit knew the story. He said, "This isn't that." I said, "It's exactly that. There's a man freezing to death 60 feet from me, and you want me to walk away and wait." And I broke the rule. I started up the slope toward the figure that wouldn't turn around. I want to describe this carefully, because the details are the only thing that kept me sane afterward. As I climbed toward it, I kept my lamp on it the whole way. I kept talking, the way you do to keep a scared person calm. "Aaron, I've got you. I'm coming up. Just stay with me. Don't move. I'm almost there." And the closer I got, the more wrong it became. Not in one big obvious way, in small ways. The kind your body understands a long time before your mind catches up and lets you say it out loud. The snow around it was undisturbed. No tracks coming in from any direction. No shifting, no scuffing, no spot worn down where a freezing man would have shifted his weight. No melt from body heat. A man who had dragged himself 60 feet up that slope, the way the marks suggested, should have left a churned-up mess all around him. There was nothing. The figure sat in clean, unbroken snow, like it had been set down there from above and never moved. And it was too still. Not hypothermic still. I've seen hypothermic still, and it's not stillness, not really. Hypothermic people tremble, or they list slowly to one side, or they breathe in those long, ragged, dragging pulls you can hear from a distance. This didn't move at all. The jacket didn't rise and fall, and I realized, climbing toward it, that I couldn't hear it breathing. 60 feet up a mountain, in that kind of cold, a living man's breath is the loudest thing out there. You see it first, fogging white in your lamp, and you hear it before you ever reach him. From that figure, there was nothing, no breath, no cloud of it in the cold air. No shift of fabric, not one single sound, just my own boots breaking the snow, and my own blood going in my ears. 30 feet away, I stopped. I put my light dead on it, and I said, my voice not steady anymore, "Aaron, turn around." And it spoke, without turning, in a low, even voice, calm as anything. It said, "You left her, Wes. You're not going to leave me, too." I stopped breathing, because nobody on that mountain knew the inside of my guilt. Nobody knew those exact words. That wasn't in the county report. That was nowhere. Those were the words I said to myself at 3 in the morning, the nights I couldn't sleep. You left her. Don't leave anyone again. The exact shape of the thing I'd carried for 11 years, said back to me in the dark in a calm and patient voice. It had reached into the one place Carol still lived inside me, and it had said the one sentence built to pull me the last 30 feet up that slope. Here's where I should have died. Every part of me that had carried Carol for 11 years wanted to close that last 30 feet. Get my hands on it. Prove, finally, that I was a man who didn't leave people behind. It had me. I want to be honest about that. It genuinely had me, and my foot was already coming up for the next step. What stopped me was Doss. From downslope, he didn't yell my name. He was too smart for that. He just said it, flat and clear into the dark. "Wes, the real one is still out here. If you go to that thing, who finds Aaron?" And that turned the key. Not fear, not the rule. That one question, because it flipped the whole thing around in my head. The wound the mountain was using on me was, don't leave a real person to die. And Doss had just pointed out that the way I was about to honor that wound was by walking into a fake and abandoning the real man, the actual freezing man, somewhere in the dark behind me. The thing had taken my own guilt and aimed it at the wrong target, and Doss had just turned my head back toward the right one. So I did the one thing it didn't account for. I didn't run from it in fear, and I didn't go to it out of guilt. I held my ground. I kept my full light locked on it, and I said it out loud, steady, for the first time in 11 years. You're not her, and you're not him, and I'm not leaving the real one to come to you. And I turned my back on it. It turned around then, I didn't see it. I'd already turned away. But Doss saw it, and Doss has never once been able to describe the face to me, and in all the years since I have never once asked him to try. Whatever it had where a face should be, it only showed it when I refused it. Like that was the last card it had to play. and it played it to a man who had already stopped looking. And it still would not turn around until that very moment. It knew the rule, too. It knew the rule was the only thing that could save me, and it knew the exact wound that would make me break it. And I understand now why the rule was always about turning, and never about talking. Because a voice you can argue yourself out of. Even in that moment, my own mind was already doing it. Wind, exhaustion, a man who'd somehow read about Carol and was playing some sick game. But turning is harder to explain away. Almost anyone who truly needs saving turns toward the thing that's come for them. It's instinct. That's why turning is the strongest sign we've got. The strongest sign. Not a perfect one, because Carol didn't turn either, and Carol was real. She just couldn't anymore. A thing that won't turn, and a person too far gone to turn, look exactly the same in the dark. So the not turning never really tells you what you're looking at. It only tells you to stop and get a second light on it before you decide. That's the whole reason the rule is built on it. And the whole reason it can never be trusted all the way. We didn't run. Running is how you die in the mountains at night. You catch a foot, you go down a slope, and nobody finds you until spring. We moved, fast, controlled, downhill, and to the side, back toward the real drag line. The one that didn't read right, the one I'd ignored the second the figure caught my eye. And 400 yards east, down in a stand of fir, with our lamps sweeping, we found Aaron Pell, the real one, hypothermic, confused but alive, wedged down into a tree well, packed in against the trunk, which is exactly where a disoriented man ends up when his body takes over and looks for shelter. He'd never been up that slope at all. He'd never seen the boulder field, the dropped pole, the glove, the 2 straight drag marks that didn't read right. None of it was his path out. It had been laid up that slope, deliberately, to pull us away from the tree well where he actually was. The figure had been sitting between us and him the entire time. Bait. Set down in clean snow, facing away, wearing his shape, baited with my oldest wound. We got Pell into a hypothermia wrap, got warm fluids and heat packs on him, and called the litter team down off the ridge. We kept him alive until sunrise, and we carried him out. He made it. He's married now. A couple of kids. He sent me a photo once. A Christmas card kind of thing. I keep it in a drawer I don't open much. Here's why I'm telling you this, and why it doesn't end the way these stories usually end. I didn't go home haunted. Nothing followed me down off that mountain. I checked. I'm not too proud to admit it. I sat in my truck at the trailhead until full daylight, watching the tree line at the edge of the lot, both hands on the wheel, waiting for it to come down out of the trees after me. It never did. Whatever lives at the head of Carbon Lake Basin, it stays at the head of Carbon Lake Basin. It's bound to that place the way Carol was bound to that boulder. It can reach into you, all the way down to the bottom of you, but it can't follow you out, and I didn't surrender to it. I didn't spend the rest of my life in some paralyzed, looking over my shoulder dread. I did something I don't think anybody who tells these stories ever does. I beat it. Once. Clean. By understanding, in the worst possible moment, exactly what it was using against me, and by refusing to let my own grief get turned into a leash that something else could hold. But it cost me. I want to be honest about the cost, because there always is one. I left search and rescue that spring, 12 years, and I walked away. Not in fear. I walked away because I finally understood the turn rule, and I couldn't keep living inside a unit that taught it like it was gospel handed down from God. Because here's the truth I carried down that mountain. The rule that killed Carol and the rule that saved me are the exact same rule. And it works about half the time. And no sentence on a clipboard can tell a scared 26-year-old which half of it he's standing in tonight. The rule isn't, don't go to the one who won't turn. The rule is, the thing out there knows your wound, and it will wear the shape of the one promise you can't break. For me, it was Carol. For you, it'll be something else. It'll be whatever you can't put down. So before I left, I made them change it. I sat in front of the county board, and I told them the whole thing. The version I've just told you, all of it. And I sat there and watched them try to decide whether I was a hero with a head injury or a man who'd finally cracked after one too many bad nights. But in the end, they changed the protocol. It doesn't say leave anymore. It says 2 lights, always, and never go up the slope a wound is pointing you toward. It's not perfect. Nothing up there is ever going to be perfect, but it's truer than what killed Carol Aldous. I forgave myself for her, in the end. Not because what happened to her wasn't my fault. I'll never fully believe that, no matter who tells me different. But because I finally understood that she was never the test. She was the bait the test was built out of, 11 years before the test ever came due. The mountain kept her in its pocket the whole time, waiting, patient, for the one night it could use her on me. And when that night came, I held my ground. I don't hike Carbon Lake Basin anymore. Not out of fear, out of respect. Some places aren't haunted. Some places are just hungry and patient, and very good at knowing exactly who it is you couldn't save. So if you ever do this work, if you're ever 60 feet down slope from a shape that won't turn around, in the dark, and it says the one thing you've never forgiven yourself for, I need you to hear me. It's not the one you lost. It's not the one you're trying to find. It's the space between them, wearing your guilt like a coat. Don't go up the slope. Find the real one and turn your back on the rest. You're listening to horror frequency. Keep 2 lights